Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Tanzir Mirza. So in the last lecture we discussed how to implement routing in our ReactJS project. In this lecture we're going to discuss some advanced features of this routing. Uh, we'll discuss nested routing because you can have obviously you can have or you can always have sub components inside master components. So how to control the flow of nested components, how to control their flow. So we're going to discuss nested routing in this lecture. So I'm going to open my code. This was our code, and I haven't made any changes in this code. This is the same code we were working in the last lecture. So we're going to start from where we left everything in the last lecture. So this is our code, all right. And the code is also provided in the link to the GitHub repository is already provided in the description. You can clone that repository from there. Now let's start with this nested routing, all right. So before starting with routing or nested routing, I want to just recall everything we taught in the last lecture, that routing only decides what to render and where to render. It will not actually take you to that particular location. For that you have to implement your own logic, maybe some navigation bar or some link or some unordered list with hyper reference or whatever. That depends upon your implementation. It will be your logic only. Okay, so this is our app.js. Now we have in our navigation bar we have home, we have about. Now I'm going to add one more item in our navigation bar. Here just copy and paste the code, and for this I'm going to use, this time I'm going to use address. And my address will be there are I have got two addresses. One is my personal address where I'm living right now, where I'm residing right now, and the other one will be my office address. Okay, so just for the sake of just simple explanation, I'll be taking this address, my personal and my office address. Okay, so hyper reference will obviously be address. Now you have got address. Uh, all right, so it will not display you anything because this address does not exist. It's just taking you to this location. And navigation bar will always be there because you have imported this navigation bar in your app, so it will always be there. It's global kind of thing, it will always be there. But when it redirects you to this address bar, then nothing will be displayed because you haven't created any sub components here. So you have address here. Okay, now I'm going to create inside address. Where is address? Okay, we haven't created any address. Now we were just talking about this navigation bar. It will take you to this address. Now we'll have to add one more component, address address dot js. It is going to be a dump component once again, a stateless component. Import from react y extra line const address, a normal arrow function. We'll return some code, JSX code here, but later on. First let me create this code. Export default address. All right, inside this return, now we are ready to return something. Okay, uh, inside this return I'll be having two components. First of all, in address section, in address I want this thing. Whenever I click on this address, there should two links should appear over here, two buttons or two hyperlinks should appear over here, and which will ask you whether you want to know the personal address or the office address. So let's create a ul unordered list. Inside this list we'll be having a list tag, obviously. Let's close this thing. One for personal, and the other one for my office address. And of course we'll have to create a hyper reference which will take us to that address. Routing root tag will not take you to that address. I'm repeating this since the starting of the part 1 itself. Hyper reference personal. Let's encapsulate this thing inside. Let's wrap this around. Oh no, only one A. It's not a double A size battery. Come on. href hyper reference to, and here I'm going to close this tag. Okay, leave this as it is right now and go back to app.js. Here we'll call, let's copy and paste. Okay, now path, this root will decide on this address, on this URL you have to render address component. And if you are using address component, then of course you will have to import address from the same components folder. You have this address over here. I'll save this code. See, it's working now, but obviously it will not it's not taking you anywhere. Personal is on personal and you're still on address. For office also you're still on address, because in hyperlink navbar, where were we, sorry, address.js, because in hyperlink we haven't mentioned anything. So once the user click on personal, you should redirect that person to address personal. URLs are generally in lowercase, so I'm keeping everything in lowercase. Address office. Now just look at the address. When I click on personal, it is all right. Just expand this. When I click on personal, it takes you to address personal. When I click on office, it takes you to address office. Personal office, personal office. When you click on home, you'll get this text. When you click on about, you'll get this text, and when you press on address, you'll get these two links: personal office, personal office. See, these are the two subcomponents. Now we'll have to create. Now I'm going to create personal.js import react, sorry, from, no, from react. All right, once again a dumb component and a stateless component in const, oh sorry, my bad. Personal, just an arrow function. We're going to return something and return a simple text. Let it be h3 tag. Now inside here I'll give my personal address. Okay, uh, Nagawara, Bengaluru. Export this thing, export by default mode and personal. All right, now we'll create one more component for, guys, you can have created different functions for personal and for these two, personal and office, inside this address.js itself. You're absolutely free to do that, but it's my way of creating and isolating data from logic. It's my way of it's my way to keep everything looks good, to keep everything clean. So I'm creating these two separate files for that. I could have absolutely uh, you are absolutely free to make dedicated functions or arrow function inside that address.js itself. Sure, you can do that, but it's my way of creating of keeping everything clean. So I'm creating two different files. Now I'll call these two components. Basically, I will call these two components inside this address.js. Okay, don't worry about that. I'm going to shortly after writing this code, import react from where, from react, no, short form, lowercase. All right, now const, the name is office, not office, office, a term component, stateless component. We are going to return something here. We're going to export default office. All right, now inside this return, I'm going to write my office address, which is Manita, Bengaluru. All right, now we'll call these two components. We'll call these two components in address. So inside, okay, let it be. Okay. Let it be address and this. We don't need to call these two inside our address. We don't need to call this personal and office in our address.js. Just leave them as it is. We can go back to our app.js, and here using this root we can decide. Let me copy this, because it's ultimately the root tag which is deciding on which URL you will be displaying what. So it's fine. Inside address, on address dot personal, you can render this personal component. Let me copy and paste this, and while you are on path office and on this URL, this particular URL, you can render office. And of course, when you are using, yeah, see here react.js is complaining that personal and office and are not defined. That's because you haven't imported them yet. Import personal from, same thing. Let's copy this thing from here, components. Oops, what's going on? Components, let me complete this. Components personal, close this thing. Then just copy and paste. Office, this will all also be office. Yeah, it's working now. Personal will be this, and official office address will be Manita. Once you click on personal, it is this. Once you click on office, it is this. Expand this. Now let's see. Home, welcome to the home page. About, I'm a front-end developer. Address, you get these two links. Click on personal, you will be taken to my personal address. Click on office, you will be taken to my office official address, my official address. Okay, Manata, Bengaluru. So this is how routing works. See, we have stored components somewhere else inside this component, but from app.js we can actually decide on what path what we have to render. So it's very simple. But how to reach that address, how to reach that, how to suppose here we have decided to uh, render this office address on this particular URL. Okay, it's decided now. But how to reach that address? We have written our code in address.js. Now here we have created that this office will, on clicking on this button office on this link, it will hyper reference. It will take you to this particular address, and it's decided in app.js. See this thing, the same thing. We have the same text here that on this address, this office component will be rendered. You can call these things here also in this address.js also, but then you will have to write again this root router thing here, not the complete thing router. Then again you have to create a root tag. Then you will have to import browser router and everything here. So right here. So just to keep the thing simple, we don't need all these things. So this is how nested routing is performed. Okay, let's see once again. For home it is this, and for about this is this, and for address this is personal and office. For personal it is this, and for official this is Manata Bangalore. So this is how nested routing is implemented. So I hope you guys like this video. uh, I'll be back with some new concepts, and I'll be back with some new things. So keep watching, keep liking, keep sharing this videos. uh, and for one last thing I want to show you, there are some warnings. Okay, logo was never used. Anyways, we'll see this later. So in the next video I'll be back with some new concepts. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much.